I've seen many things in my 30 years as a doctor, miracles, tragedies, and moments that defy reason. But that night, what healed my patient wasn't a drug, a surgery, or even my hands. It was something far more fragile and infinitely more powerful. His name was Robert Hayes, 58 years old, retired firefighter, and one of those men who carried their pain in silence. He came to my ICU after collapsing at home, heart failure, severe pulmonary edema, multi-organ stress. But what caught my attention wasn't just his condition, it was his silence. Even sedated, his body seemed restless, almost fighting an invisible weight, pressing from within. The first few hours were pure chaos, stabilizing blood pressure, balancing oxygen levels, managing arrhythmia. He hovered between life and death, every heartbeat like a coin toss. We managed to keep him alive through the night, but the scans told a harsh truth. His heart was too weak to recover. In medicine, we often talk about fighting until there's nothing left to fight with. But Robert didn't seem to fight at all. It was as if he'd already decided to let go. His wife, Claire, a calm woman with kind but weary eyes, came every morning. She'd sit quietly beside him, holding his hand without saying much. But her silence spoke louder than any prayer. I noticed how she would look away whenever I mentioned progress or hope. Something in her gaze carried more pain than fear. 3 days passed. Robert's vitals stabilized slightly, but his responsiveness didn't improve. He was alive, but detached. I've seen that before, when the body survives, but the spirit refuses to follow. That night, while reviewing his chart, I asked Claire to step into my office. I told her, sometimes patients need a reason to stay. Not just medicine, not machines, something from the heart. She hesitated, eyes filled with guilt. "There's something I never told him," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "And I think he knows." The air in the room grew heavy. I didn't push, but she continued, tears falling onto her wedding ring. 2 years ago, I had an affair, just once. I ended it immediately, but I never told him. After that, he changed. He stopped talking to me, stopped going to church, stopped laughing. He didn't get sick from the heart, Dr. Michael. He got sick from the silence. I stayed quiet, letting her words sink in. There are wounds no scan can reveal. Wounds that bleed inside, hidden behind years of pride and regret. That night, I went back to Robert's room. Machines beeped softly, oxygen hissed through the mask, and the pale light flickered against his skin. I looked at him and said quietly, "Robert, if you can hear me, there's something your heart has been carrying. Sometimes the truth doesn't break us. It frees us." No reaction. Just the same rhythm, the same fragile heartbeat. But I had seen it before. The body listens in ways we don't understand. The next morning, I found Claire sitting beside him again, holding a letter. Her hands were trembling. She looked at me, and I knew she had made a decision. "I'm going to tell him," she whispered. Her voice cracked as she began to read, each word slicing through years of silence. She confessed everything, her mistake, her remorse, her love. She spoke of the night she watched him sleep, afraid to lose him, even when he was right there. And then, something changed. The monitors showed a slight increase in heart activity. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but the more she spoke, the more his vitals stabilized. Heart rhythm, blood pressure, oxygenation. It was as if his body was waiting for the truth to finally breathe. Claire dropped the letter, sobbing, holding his hand against her chest. "I'm sorry, Robert. I love you. Please, if you can hear me, forgive me." At that moment, I swear, I saw his eyelids tremble, just once, but it was enough to silence the room, the nurse gasped. I checked the monitor. His heart rhythm had normalized. It wasn't a miracle. It was release. For the first time since he arrived, Robert's body was at peace. We didn't know if he would wake up, but that night, something inside him had already begun to heal. The following morning, I walked into the ICU expecting the usual, monitors beeping in rhythm, the faint hum of machines breathing for those who couldn't. But something was different. Claire was standing beside Robert's bed, her face pale but her eyes alive. Hopeful, she turned toward me and whispered, "He moved." I froze. "Moved?" She nodded. His hand, just a moment ago, he squeezed my fingers. I looked at the monitor. His vitals were stable, even slightly stronger. It wasn't much, but after days of stillness, that single movement was enough to change the atmosphere in the room. The nurses stopped what they were doing. For the first time, the ICU felt human again. We reduced his sedation slowly. Hour after hour, I watched for signs of consciousness. Then, at 2:43 p.m., as Claire held his hand and whispered his name, Robert opened his eyes. Not wide, not dramatic, just a slow, fragile blink, like someone surfacing from the bottom of a deep, cold sea. "Robert," I said softly, "you're safe. You're in the hospital." He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Claire leaned in, tears streaming down her face. "You heard me, didn't you? You heard everything." His eyes filled with tears. He couldn't answer, but he didn't need to. His hand moved again, this time deliberately, toward her face. He touched her cheek with trembling fingers, a gesture so simple, yet so powerful, it silenced the entire room. Over the next few days, Robert's recovery defied every medical expectation. His cardiac markers improved, his breathing normalized, and his strength returned with surprising speed. I'd seen physical recoveries before, but this was something else. It was as if the moment of truth had reconnected the circuits of his will to live. I asked him, days later, if he remembered anything from when he was unconscious. He nodded faintly. "I remember her voice," he said. "She was telling me something painful, but honest. And then, I felt light, like my chest opened again." He paused, staring at the ceiling with the faintest smile. I didn't know forgiveness could sound like oxygen. That sentence stayed with me. Claire and Robert's days in the ICU became a quiet ritual. Talks, laughter, silence. Every word seemed to rebuild something that had been broken long before his body failed. It was healing, not from medicine alone, but from connection, from truth. When Robert was finally discharged, I watched him walk, slowly, cautiously, but alive. As he passed me by, he said, "Doctor, thank you for listening." I smiled. "I didn't heal you, Robert, the truth did." That night, as I walked down the empty corridor of the hospital, I kept thinking about that moment. Medicine can measure almost everything: blood pressure, oxygen levels, organ function. But it cannot measure the weight of guilt or the strength it takes to forgive. Some hearts don't fail because of what they carry physically, but because of what they keep hidden. And sometimes, the cure is not a drug or a surgery. It's a word, a confession, an apology, a truth finally spoken aloud. So now, every time I enter a patient's room, I don't just listen to the monitors. I listen for the silence between the beats, the things unsaid, the emotions buried deep inside. Because sometimes, the real treatment begins not with medicine, but with honesty. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt that a truth healed more than a pill ever could, subscribe to the channel and join us. Here, every heartbeat tells a story about life, loss, and the quiet power of truth. And maybe you've lived something like this too. Share your story in the comments. Perhaps it'll be the next one we tell. Until then, keep your ears open and your heart ready to listen.